It's Thursday, September 21. In the headlines, government working to dismantle criminal groups. In business news, gas and diesel prices are up. Regionally, Guyana's president calls out unfair global systems at UNGA 78. Internationally, UK's doctors and consultants on strike. And in sports, a report from the pitch. The Jamaica Tallawahs eliminate St. Lucia Kings. This is the news on PBC Jamaica. I'm Simone Absalom Gale. Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of National Security, Dr. Horace Chang, says the government recognizes that the illicit trade undermines the safety and security of the nation and has been working to dismantle the criminal networks. Noting the link between those organizations and illicit trades, Dr. Chang says a more robust and targeted approach is being taken to tackling the trade of illegal firearms and drugs. He says, quote, "This is reflected in the most recent Firearms Prohibition, Restriction and Regulation Act 2022, major amendment to the Proceeds of Crime Amendment Act 2019, and the expanded focus of the Jamaica Customs Agency in securing our borders," end quote. The minister was addressing Tuesday's opening of the 37th International Drug Enforcement Conference in St. James this week. Dr. Chang says the IDEC provides a vital platform for fostering cooperation among law enforcement officials from around the world. The IDEC is being held from September 19 to September 21 under the theme Disrupting Transnational Criminal Organizations and Their Supply Chains. More than 900 delegates representing 139 countries are in attendance to discuss and collaborate on issues related to drug enforcement and the global drug trade. Minister of Finance and the Public Service, Dr. Nigel Clark, says his most notable achievement since taking on the portfolio 5 years ago is that no new taxes have been added.
What it means for the people is that regardless of how things may be, we are not adding to the problem. So over time, things have always been challenging over the course of our independent history, but the government would add to the problem every March by increasing the cost on the Jamaican people. That suddenly you'd have to fork out more money for more taxes, money for more GCT, money for more income tax and
so
for other taxes.
You never increased GCT?
No, we actually decreased GCT in 2020. In the budget of that year, I reduced the rate of general consumption tax from 16.5% down to 15%. The first time that GCT has ever been reduced across the board.
The finance minister noted the minimum business tax being discontinued in 2019.
So if you own a shop and you register it as a business, whether your shop make a profit or not, government used to take 50 grand from you every year.
Every year.
And you take with that.
And we said we abolish the minimum business
When
tax.
did that happen?
That happened in 2019.
Dr. Clark also noted the discontinuation of the asset tax and reminded the public how it was enforced.
Once you have 20 sewing machines that add up to more than, say, $200,000,
yes,
the government said, you have to pay me. Whether you make profit or not, you have to pay me a tax because you have the assets.
So let's say
every single year.
A mechanic shop, and let's say I have some drill, and I have some grinder, and my mechanic shop they are country, but I have all equipment them because my friend them from foreign send me some equipment. So the government is gonna come to me, used to come to me back in the day and look for me equipment and say I have to pay.
You have to pay
tax on the equipment them I have.
Yes.
Dr. Clark says he ordered that tax to be discontinued because he thought it would be discouraging to new and developing business owners. There is a call for volunteers to offer their guidance and expertise to youth participating in the Child Diversion Program. Acting Director of the Child Diversion Branch of the Social Justice Division within the Justice Ministry, Vanessa Clark, said interested persons can apply at www.moj.gov.jm. Ms. Clark, who was speaking in a recent JIS interview, said after vetting, the ministry will also provide training before interaction with the children occurs. She says once the mentor is assigned, they will contact the child weekly or a couple times per month to get involved with and to understand what is happening to the child and to provide guidance. Volunteers are also needed at the Village Academy in Monigue, St. Anne. It is the brainchild of one of our community heroes, Sydney Henry. So in this episode of Community Heroes, we're going to be featuring the owners and operators of Village Academy School of Agriculture right here in Monigue, St. Anne. At present, I'm waiting for the Director of Community Liaison at the Bureau of Gender Affairs, Miss Nadia McLaren. Oh, here she comes. What are you going to be doing here today?
Seeing the amount of work, the gamut of work that they're doing with the young people and the needs that they have. The Bureau have even put them on our COPE initiative, which is Community Outreach or Program Empowerment, for us to help them to offset some of the needs that they may incur, because the students here really need assistance.
All right, let's go and take a look at their operation.
I spent quite a bit of time with Food for the Poor. Worked in Jamaica, projects manager for a good while, and housing manager and so on. And then I did radio marketing across the US, many states, spent a couple of years doing that. I also worked with Sandals Foundation, project manager again, and I did some work across the region and in Jamaica. Prior to that, I did some work with the government in the STC and so on. So I've been, but most of what I've done has been with, or in the area of community development, working with young people, working with the transformation of young people's lives in the spaces that they occupy.
He says he spent his formative years in rural Jamaica.
If you're from rural Jamaica, you are marginalized in some ways, socially, economically. They couldn't travel to school. One community, then to another before you get to Ocherius. So I thought, how can I give back? How can I be a part of the process of change?
Mr. Henry says he first started a school that taught CXC subjects.
Well, we were very successful for about 3 years. We had young people who came to school. A number of them who hadn't done CXCs before did CXCs with us. I mean, when we were showing off that we had 17 young men who had come to school after dropping out and they passed 3 subjects. In the scheme of things, that's not a lot, but where we come from, oh, that was a party. So we had a good time. I struggled after that because I saw they simply moved from one crowd to another. They still were unemployed, still couldn't afford to get into sustainable work spaces. And it was painful because I still found our sisters selling in the bar, selling on the street. And I asked myself what we did. What did we do? And so I spoke to the community and said, we need to do something that is going to empower our young people. And I thought about it and said, well, we need to get into something that's competence-based. They will do for themselves. They can create for themselves. They can get into a space where they can build initiatives for themselves. And we said, where are we? In the countryside. What about it? Agriculture. So let's use agriculture.
And that's how you got to create the Village Academy. Tell me, what do you do here?
We occupy 2 properties that were formerly primary schools managed by the Jamaica Methodist District. And they have graciously leased these to us. So there's one here, and we're in the Clapham, Watsonville area of Monigue, and there's another on the west side of town in the Greyfield area. So these 2 properties. Then we have another down the road that we've been working on before COVID.
Time now for the business report with Danita Rodney.
Motorists should see an increase at the pumps in gasoline prices effective Thursday, September 21, according to the latest ex-refinery costs from Petrojam. The latest cost shows that 90 octane is up by $2.68 and will sell for $198.25 per liter, while a liter of 87 octane up by $2.57 will sell for $193.64. Automotive diesel oil is up by $4.50 per liter and will sell for $192.84. Ultra-low sulfur diesel will sell for $200.39 per liter, following an increase of $4.30. Kerosene increased in price by $3.06, will sell for $196.73 per liter. Additionally, propane liquid petroleum increased by 8 cents, will sell for $69.62, while butane up by 25 cents will sell for $76.59 per liter. Remember that marketing companies and retailers will add their respective markup to these prices. The government of Jamaica has invited bids from investors for the provision of an additional 100 megawatts of renewable energy capacity. The request for proposal, which was reportedly issued through the generation procurement entity, comes amid refreshed plans and a more ambitious goal to achieve a 50% target for renewables by 2030 in a remix of the energy grid. Now for your market updates. In foreign exchange trading for Wednesday, September 20, the US dollar sold for an average of $155.94. The Canadian dollar ended trading at $115.39. The pound sterling traded for $192.56, and the euro sold for $167.66. In JSE trading, the JSE index declined by over 1,603 points. The junior market index advanced by over 13 points. The combined market index declined by over 1,372 points, and the All Jamaican Composite Index declined by over 255 points. Overall market activity resulted from trading in 101 stocks, of which 37 advanced, 49 declined, and 15 traded firm. Stocks advanced for Barita Investments Limited, CAC 2000 Limited, and Caribbean Assurance Brokers Limited. Stocks declined for 138 Student Living Jamaica Limited, Access Financial Services Limited, and Blue Power Group Limited. Trading firm were AMG Packaging and Paper Company Limited, Cargo Handlers Limited, and Caribbean Flavors and Fragrances Limited. The overall volume leaders were Derrimon Trading Company Limited with over 900,000 units, Wigton Wind Farm Limited ordinary shares with over 800,000 units, and Dollar Financial Services Limited with over 700,000 units. In regional stocks, in Trinidad and Tobago, Calypso Macro Index Fund posted 95 shares. On the Barbados Stock Exchange, 0 securities traded. In regional business, Barbados' Prime Minister Motley believes that the world is at a point where there's need for a debt write-off for low-income countries. Prime Minister Motley says these countries, at this point in time, need the space to attain the Sustainable Development Goals.
I don't get the sense that we are prepared to make that call and to understand that low-income countries at this point in time need the breathing space. And I'm not talking about middle-income countries like Barbados. We will work out our debt as we did before, and other middle-income countries should. But I do feel that not only should we support that workout from this SG, but we should go further and have a complete debt write-off for those low-income countries that truly cannot get off of their feet. We hear again this morning that Africa spends more in debt service than it spends on health care. How can that even be conscionable in today's world? If we were to be able to create a climate mitigation trust that is anchored both in the IMF and the World Bank, then it allows us to use the special drawing rights without it becoming a liability on the balance sheet of individual countries. Now, for some countries who are exceedingly liquid because they have sovereign wealth funds and they may want to do things on their own, they may be prepared to make that commitment by themselves. For other countries, there may be a little fiscal tightness coming out of the crisis moment that we're in, particularly with the pandemic. They may prefer special drawing rights. We need to give a menu of options in order to be able to have the collective total be at a scale that allows us to win this battle.
In international business, U.S. stocks slumped after the Federal Reserve held key interest rates unchanged, as widely expected, and revised economic projections higher with warnings that the battle against inflation was far from over.
The Dow dipped 0.2%, the S&P 500 dropped nearly a full percent, and the Nasdaq plunged 1.5%. In his press conference, Fed Chair Jerome Powell noted that while inflation has cooled, the battle is far from over. But the Fed also acknowledged the strength of the economy, reinforcing the view that the U.S. will dodge a recession, says Liz Miller, president of Summit Place Financial Advisors.
If they thought a recession was coming in 2024, we would see some projections of meaningful interest rate drops next year. Once you get through 2023 on their dot plot, you just see huge dispersion and no agreement over the next few years where rates really will go.
In market data for oil prices fell after posting the largest decline in a month in the previous session, as the U.S. Federal Reserve held rates but signaled potential future hikes. Brent futures were down 73 cents to $92.80 a barrel, and West Texas Intermediate crude fell 63 cents to $89.03. And that was the business report on PBCJ. I'm Danita Rodney.
In regional news, in Trinidad and Tobago, homeschooling, early childhood centers, and student truancy are just some of the areas which will form part of a more modern Education Act. Tariana Brown-Campbell has the story on the new National Education Policy.
Education Minister Dr. Nian Gatsby-Dolly says the National Education Policy for the period 2023 to 2017 calls for amendments to the Local Education Act.
The ECCE sector, that's not part of the Education Act, that needs to be included, and some of the updated policies for student truancy and homeschooling and so on.
The minister adds changes will also be made in the technical and vocational education and training sector.
And at this time, there is a need to revitalize TVET in a way that makes students happy to choose TVET as a choice of career. But for them to do that, we have some work to do. And this policy outlines how that work is to be done. What are the strategies to be able to take us from where we are now to where we want to be?
There are also additions to the policy in a bid to ensure all schools are dealing with their issues in a uniform manner.
The Cultural Transformation Policy, newest of the lot, the Patriotism Policy, Homeschooling Policy, the Policy for the Registration of Private Schools, Digital Transformation Policy, and the Remedial Education Policy.
The Education Minister broke down the policy document during the first Education Community Forum held on Tuesday at the Caribachima West Secondary School. Terry-Ann Brown-Campbell, TTT News.
In an address that was a stinging rebuke of many unfair global systems, Guyana's President Dr. Ifran Ali told fellow world leaders of his country's plan to demonstrate how it can foster development while simultaneously protecting the environment and pursuing oil and gas development. The president made this position known during his contribution to the general debate of the 78th United Nations General Assembly on Wednesday.
President Dr. Ifran Ali made his third appearance as Ghana's head of state at the United Nations General Assembly on Wednesday. Unlike his two prior appearances at the general debate since becoming head of state, he did not wear the dark-colored formal suit most heads of state are usually dressed in. Instead, he spoke in front of the iconic emerald marble in an all-white cultural garment. With his speech focused heavily on challenging long-accepted systems, his attire seemed to back his statements. And Ghana's bold plan to balance long-standing forest preservation efforts with a prolific oil and gas sector was a major point.
As custodians of the rainforests, the size of England and Scotland combined, we are of the view that the lack of financing for standing forests suggests they are worth more dead than alive. That is why we support the expansion of a financial mechanism that appropriately values the environmental services provided by forests, including through the carbon market.
He also took aim at the global financial system, which he and other leaders of the developing world have been critical of.
The existing financial architecture is incapable of addressing current global challenges and must be reformed. In this regard, the early adoption of the Multidimensional Vulnerability Index, implementing the measures in the Bridgetown Initiative, and addressing liquidity support, private capital, development lending, trade, and more inclusive governance of the international financial institutions must form part of the reform agenda.
Dr. Ali also addressed Venezuela's claim to a majority of Ghana's territory. Tensions between the two countries were heightened again just the day before, after Venezuela rejected Ghana's oil auction.
Guyana considers this a threat to regional and international peace and security, as well as to Guyana's investment partners. We demand that Venezuela honors its obligation under the Charter to pursue only peaceful means to settle any disputes it may have with Guyana, including adjudication before the International Court of Justice. Allowing the court to decide would ensure a resolution that is peaceful, equitable, and in accordance with international law.
The president also addressed the issue of food security, noting that people should not go hungry and that food should not be weaponized in war. Reporting for the newsroom, Vishani Raghavir.
Acknowledging the difficulties faced by many citizens in the post-pandemic period, the government of St. Kitts and Nevis has instituted several measures that Prime Minister Dr. Terence Drew called a reset at the time of the country's 40th anniversary of independence.
Speaking during the 18th September sitting of the National Assembly of St. Kitts and Nevis, just hours away from Independence Day, Prime Minister Drew announced measures that would greatly assist citizens in areas such as electricity, water, housing, social security, and savings on building materials.
This administration has decided that for all of our workers who are registered with Social Security, as Independence 40 reset, we have done all of that for them. We now are saying to them, thank you, and we will deposit $1,000 for each of our workers. In St. Kitts and in Nevis, people are to remember that Independence 40 was at a time post-COVID. Things were hard and challenging. The government had to tighten its belt, create the fiscal space, and come up with policies to directly impact and benefit the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. Your electricity to be reconnected. Your water to be reconnected with arrears taken care of. Your housing situation to be taken care of. Your land ownership situation to be taken care of. Opportunities to own homes afforded to our people. And then we want to say to you that even in these times, that we want you to always have an opportunity to remember that Independence 40 was a significant milestone. We are drawing a line in the sand before Independence 40 and after Independence 40.
Several of the benefits to citizens, he said, would also help to stimulate the economy. Glenn Bart reporting for SKN Newsline.
In international news, parts of the United Kingdom's National Health Service are again under severe strain this week. For the first time, junior doctors and consultants will be striking together. More from Al Jazeera.
Jamie Hale is a wheelchair user who's relied on Britain's National Health Service, or NHS, for most of his life.
Without a viable NHS, I wouldn't be here, and if the NHS collapses, I don't particularly credit my chances.
In April, he decided to undergo major surgery. 5 months later, he's still waiting for it to be scheduled.
It's difficult and frustrating. It impacts on the way I can live my life, the amount of pain and discomfort I'm in.
During the last round of strikes in May, Jamie had another procedure delayed 2 weeks. One of a million medical appointments postponed since December thanks to healthcare strikes. Hospital leaders and public health officials call the current situation dangerous, warning continued strikes create an enormous challenge.
The strikes this week represent the biggest industrial disruption to Britain's nationalised health service in its history. They will mean longer delays for patients already waiting months for treatment or surgery, but they also highlight a workforce and a system that's close to breaking point.
Senior doctors in England began striking Tuesday. On Wednesday, junior doctors joined them, leaving just limited medical cover nationwide. And on Thursday and Friday, tens of thousands of junior doctors will provide no service at all. Senior doctors have seen their pay fall 17% in real terms since 2010. The government this year suggested a 6% increase. Junior doctors also saw a drop of up to 17% during the same period. They were recently offered a 9% uplift. 2 in 3 UK doctors belong to the British Medical Association behind this strike, including Dr. Arjun Nagra, a London doctor early in his career.
The strength of kind of the unity that we've got amongst us is at an all-time high, and that's only because doctors realise this is the last chance saloon for us. It's kind of the last throw of the dice. It's now or never to save our profession in this country and to restore it.
Britain's health minister hasn't held talks on pay for 6 months, and this week announced plans to force doctors back to work.
Prime Minister has been clear the position for pay this year has been agreed through the pay review body process, and that is the government's position.
Despite the delays Jamie faces, like many British residents, he still supports the doctors' demands.
That's what I care about, is knowing that there'll be an NHS in 5, 10, 15 years' time, not whether I end up waiting another month now.
Many similar sacrifices may be made this week, but without higher salaries, there remain no simple solutions. Dylan Marks, Al Jazeera, London.
In sports, students and other members of the Dinthill Technical High School fraternity are praying for students who were struck by lightning on Tuesday. 2 students were hospitalized after the incident. Students Jordan Harrison and Asher Hutchinson, who were among 4 individuals who were treated and released after falling victims to the lightning strike, said they were praying for the recovery of those still in hospital. The lightning struck half an hour after the 3:30 p.m. start of the Issa Water da Costa Cup football match between the school's senior teams, which was being held at the Charlemont football field. The injured persons were taken to the Linstead Hospital. The Trinbago Knight Riders and Guyana Amazon Warriors are currently getting set for battle in Qualifier 1 of the Republic Bank CPL. The winner will go to the final, while the losers will meet the Jamaica Talawas, who eliminated the St. Lucia Kings this week.
Batting first, the Kings had a below-par performance, scoring just 125 for 9 from their 20 overs. Roston Chase tallied a fighting 40, but lacked the support at the other end. Fabian Allen bagged 4 wickets for 25 runs, his best effort thus far in his T20 career. The Talawas were in a hurry in their run chase, marking 43 in 4 overs before losing their first wicket. Matthew Ford gave the Jamaicans a scare with 3 wickets in 3 overs, eventually finishing with 4 for 23. Even his heroics could not hold back the defending champions, finishing the game on 126 for 5 in 17.2 overs. Brandon King had 30 and Raymond Reefer 30 not out. Speaking at the close, skipper Brandon King says his team is ready to face any of the remaining 2 teams.
Tonight he bowled an incredible spell, got 4 wickets. It's hard to do that in the last 10 overs of a T20 game when the guys are trying to be aggressive, so really it goes out to him. He had an incredible game.
They now move on to Friday's second eliminator in hope of repeating last season's performance.
And that's it for the news on PBCJ. You can follow us on our social media platforms at PBCJamaica. Remember, we are the People's Station.